What is up, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday night's Take It to the Rank, an opportunity to have a little Q&A session about our Chicago Bears. Now, obviously, a lot of news has been happening. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Talk about the new GM and everything and a possible coaching search. But I think we need to take a moment and kind of recognize what happened on Saturday night. And I got to be honest with you, it almost felt like the Chicago Bears were victorious on Saturday night as Aaron Rodgers once again was ushered out of the playoffs. I don't know why the Packer fans continue to do this to themselves. They go out there. I don't know why they want the number one seed anymore. There's no more mystique in Lambeau. There's no mystique to the Packers. There's no mystique to your quarterback. But thankfully, and I felt like Bobby the Brain Heenan getting his justification when Hulk Hogan became Hollywood Hogan at Bash at the Beach in 1996, as he celebrated saying, listen, this is what I've been saying for years about Hulk Hogan. Similarly, this is what I've been saying for years about Aaron Rodgers and why this team was going to lose. And now it looks like the Packers are on the cusp of imploding. And I know a lot of people have been pointing out the fact that over the last 30 years, the Green Bay Packers have had Hall of Fame quarterback play continuously. And yet they have as many Super Bowl titles to show for it, from Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, as the Baltimore Ravens have with Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. And I know a lot of people have said that. And my response to that is keep saying it, because it can't be said enough. But here's the thing. It is now a new day in Chicago. So everything that's been happening in the past with Rodgers, with Favre, we don't care about that. We care about the future. We care about our quarterback. We care about our new GM. And we're going to talk about it all. And you know what, Sammy? Without further ado, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray. The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. It's going to be sick.
All right, welcome to Take It to the Rank on a Tuesday night. What will become a tradition? This is the inaugural version of Take It to the Rank, and we are going to be here every Tuesday throughout next year's Super Bowl, which, listen, do I want to get ahead of myself and say it's going to be the Bears? I don't. But I will tell you that we're going to be here. We're going to be talking about all the issues that are affecting the Bears, right from the hiring of the coach through next year's playoffs and everything like that, and to help us kick off this inaugural edition. I had to go to the family. I had to go to somebody who's very close, who's very near and dear to my heart, a man who over the last number of years we have bonded together. I love this man like a brother, and we are very happy to be joined tonight by the incomparable Draft Dr. Phil of the Tape Never Lies Network. Draft Dr. Phil, how are you, buddy?
What is up? I appreciate the love.
I don't feel like usually when I come on your show, you have a track, you have a rap for me, and then it's just me saying that I love you. That's all that I have for you tonight. But how are you?
I am great. I mean, as you said, there's a new dawn, a new era of Chicago Bears football. It's almost like when you were playing Atari back in the day and you hit reset and the game just started over. We didn't have all this memory and remember where you are. Everything got reset. That's what basically the Chicago Bears are doing today by stealing from the Vikings. Think about that, because they really wanted Ryan Poles. Now they're trying to backpedal, Viking fans.
Yeah. Which is, it's hilarious. It's right. How many Viking fans did you see who are like, oh, the Vikings have way more talent. There's no way he takes the Bears job.
Exactly. We saw it all day, actually, and for the past week. And then, with this news, my buddy David Kaplan out of ESPN Chicago hit it out of the park. Does a great job, by the way. Does a great job. Great man. Big supporter of you and I. And let me just say this. He said, from his source, Ryan Poles said, either I am deciding on the head coach or I'm going to Minneapolis to do it there. That's what I want. Adam.
Yeah.
I don't want Ernie Accorsi or Bill Polian picking the head coach and having another Matt Nagy involved where,
I
it's
think
the good old boys network. This friend told me this, and then all of a sudden, or it was John Fox.
John Fox is the one.
Yeah, John Fox. I want the GM to sit down and say, this is our football team. And these are the guys I want to view going forward. We haven't had that clean slate. And then the GM, you look at Phil Emery was hired. He kept Lovie Smith, even though he didn't want to. This organization run by the McCaskies has been a disaster. And maybe they're getting it right here. I think they took steps in the right direction. I don't know about you, but I liked the wide net being cast out to totally try to cover everything that you hopefully are looking in the mirror. And it seems like they did and said, this is what's wrong with us.
Yeah, it really is an instance. I am not as hard on the McCaskey family as a lot of people. And I understand, because the record of success after Lovie Smith has not been great. Emery didn't work out. He made some terrible hires with Mark Trestman, passing on Bruce Arians. You have the whole thing with John Fox. And Matt Nagy, who I liked, just didn't work out. And I think the McCaskies tried to do the right thing with Ryan Pace. I think they tried to do the right thing with Matt Nagy. And to their credit, though, they got rid of him. And I think that one of the things that kind of stood out to me during their press conference, which wasn't great, I understand the optics of that, but when they said that Ted Phillip, like when they said the GM is going to answer to the McCaskey family, I took that as a positive. Like, that's what you want. Like, you don't want it. Like, why is Ted involved? Like, Ted I don't know what his job is exactly, but that's fine. The family is not going to fire themselves. Like, that's just the reality of it. And you see it. Like, there's other families in the NFL who are successful. And you look at the Irsay. I always go to the Irsays. And I always think that's a good comp because Jim Irsay I think he wants to have a good football team. He's done a great job, though, of getting guys like Ballard in there. They've been very fortunate with the quarterbacks that they've gotten up until Carson Wentz. I think the McCaskies could do that. And if Brian Poles is that guy, I think the McCaskies just become window dressing. We'll wave to Virginia during the NFC Championship game, and I think we'll be good.
Yeah, that's where you got to be. Obviously, I wanted a Ted Phillips pushed over to the accountant side and let him deal with Arlington Heights, but embrace that and then get a football president in there, somebody that is football and football only, that's not concerned about ticket sales or PSLs or any of that minutia, that their focus was on making sure the Chicago Bears now with Justin Fields at quarterback were the most successful they could possibly be. And that would be somebody I've always preached. Olin Kreutz would be that guy. Obviously, George addressed Olin Kreutz and undressed him in a wrongful way, in my opinion, in that press conference. That's a whole nother show. But the reality was, here we are on the cusp of what it is that their plan was. Get Bill Polian in the building with Tanisha Wade, Soup Campbell. Unfortunately, again, Ted is involved in this stuff. How much so, we don't know. But
like you said, he's the accounting guy, so he's got to make sure the dollars add up. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
If that's his role, let's just keep it 100. I've dealt with many of player and former players on our network, like Chris Zorich and Olin and so on and so forth down the line. All of them tell me Ted is a hell of a lot more involved in football. Now, he's talking from the past. They're talking from the past. Ted put a kibosh on the LaDainian Tomlinson trade that we had completely ready to rock and roll. So he has invaded in the football stuff in the past. So Ted, to every blogger and people thinking that there was some sort of conspiracy, that Ted had nothing to do with football, that wasn't true. Now with Ryan Pace, he was the last one to say yes on the Khalil Mack. He was the guy, even over the ownership. Virginia put it into Ted's hands. And that's really where the things were. Now, to your point, George comes out. They're actually going to answer to me, the owner's son, whatever his title is, the chairman. And that's how it should be. That's where we are, because now the president of football is probably Ryan Poles. Now we've replaced one Ryan with another Ryan versus Ryan. But
that's fine.
If we hire Eberflus, we got Ryan and Matt. We don't have to change anything. We'll be back.
Yeah, well, that was a big thing. Do you believe that he is definitely going, because Eberflus is one of the finalists of the three that we're talking about. Do we really believe? I know a lot of people are skeptical on Twitter, and they're like, we'll believe it when we see it. I think that it's legit. Like, I think because he had other offers, that he is going to be the person who signs off on the head coach. Do you actually believe
absolutely that? Like I said, I trust David Kaplan. He told me personally that yes, Ryan Poles has said, I'm only taking this job with you, Chicago Bears, if I'm in charge of hiring our coach, because he's recognizing this isn't just about me. I got millions of fans all around the world that are living for this football, living and dying with this football team. And us at TTNL, you can see all the TTNL heads here, probably in your chat, live and die with this. That, to me, was the most important thing, that he put his foot down and said, you want me? I'm hiring the coach, or I'm going to Minneapolis to do it. That right there, sign me up for that. The fact that he's a former offensive tackle even makes it more exciting for me, because this is a guy that's going to take a priority stance at understanding. It's not cliche to say it all starts up front. It's actually true. It actually does matter. Oh, by the way, did you see the problems Tom Brady was having because his right tackle couldn't stay on? These things affect offenses. So to have somebody that's going to invest up front where it matters most, Ryan Pace, 7 years, he drafted 2 tackles this past year. That was it. That stuff affects you for the long haul. You and I both know it. They're not sexy names on Friday night during the draft, Thursday night, prime time. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to be able to protect Justin Fields and make David Montgomery a household name. That really should be the case, because David is good in a windstorm. Imagine if David had some giant holes to run through. It'd be even more incredible.
And you think about what took down the Kansas City Chiefs last year in the Super Bowl. It was their offensive line, and yet they went out there and addressed it, rebuilt the offensive line completely. They're back in the AFC Championship game this season. So, and he was part of that staff. He knows exactly. He knows what the score is. And so I'm very hopeful for that. We'll talk a little bit more about him. We do have some people who have some questions. Thanks to everybody who's been joining us. And we're going to go to the first question. It comes from Brandon Livingston, who says, do you think Poles does O-line or wide receiver first in free agency? I think we already kind of touched on this, but what do you think?
It's going to be interesting, because clearly Allen Robinson is going to move on from this team. I believe,
obviously,
probably there could be a rekindling if there was some sort of understanding of who the head coach, offensive coordinator is going to be. But I'm looking 90% A-Rob is gone. So that being said, that becomes a huge need. Tevin Jenkins, to me, is going to be your left tackle. I loved what I saw of him when he got the opportunity. And another Matt Nagy failure, putting a 40-year-old at the end of the season. Just let this kid get the reps. Obviously, he came in the second half against Minnesota, performed well. He got hurt the week before. So we know the story. There's no doubt that, you invested a second-round pick in Jenkins to be your left tackle. How he goes through camp without a back injury is going to be a story. So you're not done there. So Brandon's 100% right. If I look and take a step back, offensive line and wide receiver become big-time priorities there. When you're going into wide receiver, in the draft, how many Jamar Chases are you going to find? Randy Mosses. It's a difficult, you could find them. Sometimes you find them in middle rounds, but you gotta, I think, solidify this offense for Justin Fields and get a veteran in there that's going to play to the whistle every time. I didn't see that with Allen Robinson. I saw a selfish football player when the ball was away from him or the shine wasn't shining. He didn't play to the level. Listen, Adam, you and I both know I loved Allen Robinson coming out. We invested in him when he was hurt.
Yeah.
So for him to go to the level that he took it, I think he was upset that they put the tag on him, and he like somebody that was spoiled and upset going forward. So just to answer the question, I think you're going to go wide receiver probably in free agency to try to get that big time player, especially if Adams is in the mix there. I think you got to get involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, why not take a run at Devontae Adams to see what happens? I know a lot of people will connect the dots, think that he can go to the Las Vegas Raiders to reconnect, I guess, with Derek Carr. That's one that they've wanted to do for quite some time. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Devontae Adams go to Las Vegas. Not that I wouldn't take a chance with him. Obviously, put the money out there, see what he wants to do. Also, a couple of guys who got hurt at the end of last year, Michael Gallup, Chris Godwin, were two players that I was looking at. I actually I think I'd made the reference on your show that next year when Allen Robinson was presumed to leave, I'm like, well, they're just going to replace him with another Penn State guy. They're going to bring in Chris Godwin, who I love, who I think is very underrated. And had he not blown out his knee, I think that he would have been somebody that we would have taken a look at. We still might. You never know. But those are two guys.
Number one college receiver in that draft was Chris Godwin for when he was coming out of Penn State. I love that football player. I'm with you step for step. He was the target until, again, are you going to go back down that avenue and invest in someone who was injured? It worked out okay with Allen Robinson. I believe Godwin would be a tremendous asset for this football team. Again, depending on the offensive coordinator and the philosophy that they're going to have with this football team, I think Justin Fields needs more than Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, and they really need somebody who can stretch the field. And they need somebody who can get down the field because Justin Fields is so great at throwing the deep ball,
right?
That they need those deep play guys. And that's really going to be their biggest need. And that's going to be the kind of guy they need to look at when they're evaluating the wide receivers. Steven wants to know, though, if available, Cooper or Godwin, which way would we lean there? I don't know. I would go Godwin. I think Godwin's going to come with a discounted price because of the injury.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to. He's not going to come cheap, but he's definitely going to come a little bit less. I'll use your term, the discount. We won't give a double check. They double checked his bags on the door as he left.
Yeah,
from Lambeau with a loss at him. But
how does this? Oh, they're mocking the belt. How does that ever work out for everybody? Devontae Adams. I almost responded to his tweet this year, like, hey, like after the Bears game, like, when does mocking the discount double check ever help? And I was going to say the NFC Championship game last year, but I didn't. I didn't want to get into it with Devontae Adams. He's friends with Derek Carr and the Carr family, so I didn't want to get into the middle of it. But I want to like Devontae Adams. It'll be like, it's like when Diggs goes to Buffalo. You're like, oh, I can like Stephon Diggs now.
Exactly.
But I'm not a big Cooper guy. Like Amari Cooper is who I'm assuming they're talking about. I don't know. There's something. I know that when he got traded to Dallas, he did pretty well. I was always mistakenly. I mean, because Cooper did come in and play well. I always thought a lot of Golden Tate. I'm like, why didn't you just trade Golden Tate? Because he's cheap. He's basically free. But that didn't work. Whatever.
I like Amari Cooper a lot. The work ethic. I think he's been so banged up, but he's never stopped delivering effort on the football field. But to your point, he's been slowing down because of that body damage that he's taken. He's not afraid of contact, and he's taking a lot of shots. And to your point, getting $100 million or whatever he was at the time from Dallas, what are you going to expect he's going to want from the Chicago Bears to be the number one receiver? Because that's really what the Bears, you look at that roster, they need a number one. I love Darnell Mooney. I think his ceiling is so high, but you got to get someone to pair with him that does different. I think it's got to be a size speed guy. It's got to be like a 6'3" speed guy. Opposite him, he's very slight, slender, great speed, great start, stop, but somebody else has got to draw some coverage here, help Justin Fields out. And to your point, I think Justin Fields excels at the deep ball and the back shoulder fade. Those things, unfortunately, curl with Nagy, who has no curls. We never got to see it enough.
Never got to see it. We should have known. I think when Matt Nagy showed up in Miami in 2018, rocking a visor, bald guy in a visor, we should have known. I mean, he still relied on Cody Parkey kicking a 50-yard field goal to win that game. Oh. But I think that the bald guy with the visor should have been the first thing that we looked at. But we do have, we're getting some questions here. Let's roll. Sorry, Sammy. Who are
Barlissimo from our network.
We love him.
He's not Italian. He is British, though.
I know, but I can't help but say
you can't help it. It's like an Italian dish.
Bellissimo. I went to the Olive Garden. We had the Bellissimo. We got a nice Chianti. It was perfect. Who are the priority Bears free agents to keep?
Well, I was just talking. It depends on the coach.
Right.
Akeem Hicks to me is somebody as deep as Minnesota. Obviously he didn't play in the last game, but I know there was, I don't know if you heard this, Adam, but the functioning of Akeem Hicks and Matt Nagy and Rumpf, the defensive line coach, apparently there was a dramatic flare up in practice and words were exchanged. 100%. And Akeem Hicks was the only guy held accountable. He becomes, and I'm starting with him because obviously the elephant is James Daniels in the room, but I want to start with Akeem Hicks. I just think the immense talent that he has, any defensive mind, if Dan Quinn comes in here and he's watching tape, you are going to see that kind of effort. Can he stay healthy is going to be the question. But I think because he's at his age, because he's that dominant and freakish, I think you keep that kind of football player in the city of Chicago. As far as you got to keep James Daniels. Yeah. He's the best offensive lineman they have and has a ceiling so high. He's built, I break down the tape at the Tape Never Lies Network. James Daniels has athleticism and the ability to be an all-star, all-pro center. They use him at guard. I'm not high on Sam Mustipher at all. And I feel like James Daniels, with an offensive-minded coach that says, I'm going to put my best 5 guys on the football field. You invest in James Daniels into your philosophy. He can play either zone scheme or power run man scheme on the offensive line. He becomes the number one priority moving forward because just like we started, you got a new GM who's a former offensive tackle himself. He's going to understand investing in that offensive line. It's homegrown. Don't let those guys get out of your building.
I agree. And I think that I think you nailed it. Like Ryan Poles comes in and is like, this is the guy that we have to keep. I think Akeem Hicks is a nice piece to have. I don't know. And the thing too, like I know it's expensive and I know he's going to be in demand, but what is the market? What is the market for Akeem Hicks? Like who's bringing him in?
That's important.
We should be competitive for it.
Listen, Reggie White went to Green Bay. And I'm saying this in truth. I look at his tape and I'm like, with my father on a Saturday, X's with Berlissimo and his Conti, we were looking at Akeem Hicks and we're just sitting there like, wow, this guy is so dominant.
Yeah.
What he's doing is unbelievable. mix that with Robert Quinn and a healthy Khalil Mack. That's why coaches and Ryan Poles is here, because they recognize you have the Holy Trinity on your football team right now. You got the quarterback, you got the pass rushers. Now you hope those tackles are going, the young tackles, and Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins.
Right.
You have the foundation of how you want to build a football team in place, so to speak. You can get better. Yes, they may invest in a left tackle like Armstead, and then all of a sudden maybe you're moving Tevin to right tackle, to, like they did with John Tate when they signed him here, put him at left tackle. He was a veteran. Right. Then they moved the other guy to right tackle, and they built their offense, and thus they ended up going to the Super Bowl behind that with Reuben Brown, Olin Kreutz, Garza. You remember the team, Fred Miller. So this is important as they move forward. Guy like Hicks, to me, is somebody I would want on this football team, because I really believe that his market is going to be smaller than he thinks or anyone thinks, and that, his health is the key here. Yeah. And will he say at his age, I'm going to give a hometown discount here to stay on with this football team? I think it would be a mistake to let him go. Yeah,
I think a lot of people, a lot of these guys love Chicago. I think they like being a part of Chicago. Like if you ever pay attention, especially Allen Robinson on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, like how much he loves basketball, how much he loves the Bulls and all that stuff. I feel like that kind of stuff matters. And if we get the right coaching staff, everything's out the window. Like it's a new day. Like we've talked about, it's a new day. Ryan Pace is gone. Matt Nagy is gone. If we get coaches in here that these new players connect with, and they're like, oh yeah, like this is something cool to be a part of, I think we can do very well. And I love Akeem Hicks. The only thing that I worry about is some team that's on the cusp of a Super Bowl who really needs him could bring in somebody and listen, I would not say a bad word about them. I'd be like, you know what? I don't even know who would be in that situation. Kansas City, Buffalo,
Buffalo.
Yeah, if Kansas City poached them, you're
New England.
What are you going to do? New England, like, all right, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Although with New England, I'm like, I'd rather play with Justin than Mac. I know you love Mac Jones, but
I do love Mac Jones, but listen, I'm just getting word from the smartest man to tell you, not only does he love you, but if the Bears have officially made Ryan Poles their GM. So it is officially official. We were worried because remember, Dave McGinnis was announced that he was the coach.
Oh, right.
Before, and then he didn't get, but it's now official.
Now it's official. Okay.
Official. He said, go skull yourself.
Yeah, go skull yourself. Nice try, buddy. The guy they're getting from San Francisco, like I saw, like they're like, oh, look at all these studs. Look at all these studs that San Francisco drafted while he was there. Like, first of all, Bosa fell to you. So don't act like it was some like stroke.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I think that San Francisco has drafted very well. I'm not taking anything away from them. They also traded DeForest Buckner, which might have like cost them a little bit, because who's the kid that they got instead of him? Like it made sense at the time. Jesus, why can't I think of the kid's name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. They've done well, but I'm like, look at Kansas City. Kansas City drafted Mahomes. So I like nothing, like everything kind of like, and it's the same thing with the kid or the guy with the Chargers. I'm like, I don't think a lot of people are giving him enough credit.
Herbert,
for what he did for drafting. And I this is one that I wear because I take victory laps on how spot on I was about both Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Just spot on. Could not have been better. So wrong on Justin Herbert. Like, it's so humbling. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, when you watched him at Oregon, you're like, God, every time he played like somebody like Auburn, they just handled him. And you're like, what is happening? Like, this guy folds in the big games. And then I guess it doesn't matter. I don't know. They didn't meet the Raiders when they needed to. So maybe I was on the Jordan might still be out. He might Rodgers his career. But I think we have more questions. I'm sorry, yes. Sammy. I know we have a lot of questions. HL Priest wants to know what's your opinion on Cole Kmet at this point. I'm going to jump in here first, and then get the experts get the expert's opinion. Here's my homer opinion is I'll never let I literally cannot look at the last 2 years and the Matt Nagy offense and write somebody off and be like, this guy sucks, this guy's a bust or anything like that. Outside of like Tony Miller or somebody like that. I think with Cole Kmet, because it's so intricate to play tight end, that I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't know that he's ever going to become the George Kittle light that we've all wanted him to be. But at the same time, I think that we've seen enough athleticism. There's been enough plays with him down the seam. And I know you don't want to put too much into one game. But when you took Matt Nagy out of the equation against the Steelers and you were in a position of like, you guys just have to go win this game. Like it's the coach is out. It's up to the players on the field. The two guys who shone the brightest were Justin Fields and Cole Kmet. And I'm putting way too much stock in that one game. And again, if Ryan Poles is going to come in and let us know the answer, I think that he can be a good player in this league still. I'm not ready to give up on him. And we've seen tight ends emerge later on in their careers. If he's not George Kittle-like, can he be like Jade Novacek? Like I would take that. Like that would be I don't know how you feel about him.
I think you knocked it out of the park. I was going to say the same thing. I feel as though it would be completely negligent of fans to take what Cole Kmet did under a philosophy that never incorporated seam routes. And it was strange because you look at what they do in Kansas City.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, why isn't that being done here inside the hashes? Where I look at former Steelers tight end. What was this? I totally just had
Heath Miller.
Heath Miller.
Yeah.
As the perfect example. I feel as though you hit it out of the park. When you looked at it, when he was given an opportunity down seams, he was able to make plays. Is he at the stem, that twitchy separator? There's not many George Kittles and Kelce's in this world. Gronks who are that big and are able to move in short areas so twitchy. He does not have that twitchiness. I will totally say that, but he does show me. I was worried about his toughness, but down the stretch here, when it became less Nagy, more laser, or like you said, hey, go out and win this game. Cole Kmet showed up and impressed me on tape, not only with his hands, but his, dropping his pads. I think with a good coach and a philosophy to use him the right way, it just totally bothered me how they used the tight end. And I go down to Jasper Horsted. Here's a guy that I felt
that was his thing, though. That was Matt Nagy's thing. It's like we need tight ends because this offense
exactly. I had six of them. Had six, and they didn't use them. And Jasper Horsted had such a connection with Justin Fields. It's like you, as a coach, have a job to recognize talent, not politics or where you drafted someone. I felt like you did try to cover your base with Jimmy Graham too much instead of getting Jasper and Cole, the future, possibly at tight end, out there and incorporate them in the philosophy. So I'm with you 100%, Adam, for HL. I think you're getting to a level. There's something to be said. Let me just say this about Jasper Horsted, that commentary that people are talking about with Mahomes and Kelsey, where they were able to communicate what was going to go down. There's something to be said when someone's on the practice squad and they're trying to get their feet underneath them in the NFL and Justin Fields, and they find a security blanket. You as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator, have to recognize that and say, you know what, this kid Horsted, every time he's out there, is making a play and is doing something to help our quarterback's confidence and the offense's success. It was never founded under Nagy. It was more about me and plays instead of players. And that is unfortunate. Not to take away from Cole Kmet, but there's another kid no one's going to be talking about, Jasper Horsted, that I feel like could have a place next year with a new coach recognizing, hey, we're playing the best.
Yeah, and you know what? We don't care because when it comes to the Bears, we don't care about our fantasy points. I don't care. If one of these two guys just can come out, if one of these two guys can just make the clutch plays to move the sticks, we're fine. And, as we're talking about this more and more, we really benefited. Like Matt Nagy's arrogance eventually ended up helping us out, because had Matt Nagy come out at the beginning of this season and realized, listen, I've never had a sub 500 year. I've made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 seasons. If he would have been like, you know what, we're going to go out here and play the kids, and we're not going to make the playoffs. We're not playing to, necessarily go into the NFC Championship game or anything like that. He might have bought himself an extra year, because these guys are talented.
Right.
Despite what people think, which is so amazing. I cannot wait till next season. And I'm not saying the Bears are going to the Super Bowl. Not by any, although let me tell you something. The NFC is going to start being wide open.
Oh yeah.
Wide stinking open. It's going to be all stacked on the AFC. And it has been for a couple of years. Like all the good young quarterbacks are in the AFC. All that stuff's going on. But you look at the teams that are still playing right now. The Rams are going to still have Matthew Stafford. The 49ers are probably going to be starting Trey Lance. New Orleans is done. Tampa Bay is older. Like Green Bay, who knows where Aaron Rodgers might go to the AFC. Like it is. I don't want to say like we're not going anywhere. The Falcons still they're tied to Matt Ryan still. The Bears are so their talent is so underestimated.
Oh yes.
Next year they're going to win double-digit games, and people are going to be like, "Who saw this?" Like we did, because they're not as bad as you think it is. And honestly, if Matt Nagy would have just been smart enough to be like, this is a kind of a rebuild, like a retool year. We're going to play all these kids. We're going to start Justin Fields in training camp.
Yes.
We're going to bring in the 2 young tackles. Now, obviously, Tevin Jenkins would not have been able to play because of his injury. But, we're going to go with these kids, which would have been fine. Sean Desai played. His defense was good enough with, let's bring up the Oregon.
Herbert.
Yeah.
Oh, the kid? Khalil Herbert.
Not Khalil Herbert. No. The cornerback.
Graham.
We're going to play Graham. We're going to play Jalen and do all this. He would have bought himself another year. He didn't. Thank you. Now we have all these studs. We're fine. We're going to have a new coach, which is going to be great. But we have also more questions too.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're getting to those. I know we're giving long answers. I'm sorry.
I don't think he can be traded based on his contract, because I've asked this question because he's one guy that I feel
can Eddie Jackson be traded? Is the question.
Can Eddie Jackson be traded? I'm sorry. You're on the podcast too. I'm just jumping in there as your boy just to let you know he can't be traded based on his guaranteed deals. It would be deadly to the salary cap. So as much as I would honestly, somebody has to come in and light a fire under this kid's, you know what? I don't know if we could swear on this show. So
I don't know.
The reality is
Sammy's Canadian. Our producer Sammy's Canadian. So they're too nice. I don't know if they're ready for American swearing on this. The
kid has talent, Adam.
He does.
Eddie. But he's so and this is so what was that song? You're so 2000 late. This is where we are with Eddie. Yes.
It's a Black Eyed Peas song.
Black Eyed Peas would be so happy with this, because the reality is Eddie can't go preaching anybody could tackle until he tackles, because that's the job as the last line of defense. And thus that's where his, detriment has been. He's let up huge plays by being incognito in tackling as well as incognito in coverage. So he's not going anywhere, but I hope a Brian Flores, Jim Harbaugh, a Dan Quinn comes in here and says, listen, rule number 1, tackle. That's number 1. If you don't, you're not playing, and stand by that accountability, because Eddie got away with a lot because of Eddie got paid. And that's that was a Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy Chicago Bears thing. So Bojack's got a tackle. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Bojack was kind of like the guy, the comic at the open mic who bombs and yet goes out and is trying to tell every other comic what jokes they should do. Writing tags for you. I got a tag for you. I'm like, bro, I saw you for 5 minutes, not get a single laugh. How about you just go back to the back and drink your IPA and leave me alone?
Exactly.
It's unfortunate.
There's a reason why his Frosted Flakes went on sale for 50 cents a box.
You're like, oh boy. And he's like, I kind of want to be a slot corner now. You're like, bro, like you still got to tackle on the slot. Like it's almost too much. It's almost too important of a position now. And actually, it's one of the things about Thomas Graham that you look at. And I know that everybody says like, well, we needed a guy opposite, like outside of Jalen Johnson. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I think if Thomas Graham could come in, and I don't think because when Buster was there, he was really good, right? If I'm thinking about this, Greg, like he was good in the slot. Like we want slot corners who are good. Right. Well, Thomas Graham could come in to be a slot corner. I don't know. I thought that worked out. Like you go back and learn how to tackle.
Thomas Graham. Let me say this to your point. Barrelissimo, myself, and my dad, we have a show on Saturdays called X's with the O's, where we take the all 22 tape, we break it down. We spent a whole show or half a show talking about how impressed we were with Thomas Graham playing corner. Now, if you remember, it was that game where Eddie's out, everybody's out, and they played the young kids. And all of a sudden, that was the best defensive performance they had put on. It was against Minnesota. And listen, there's something to be said about Thomas Graham. When you watched him, he was able to understand the coverages, his responsibility, and he was a willing tackler, and he was getting after the ball. I don't understand how they're, the way they played players. All I saw was a lot of politics being involved, and it's unfortunate. I think that kid has a bright future based on what we saw on the tape. So to your point, that's another thing that nobody's talking about in, this time of the year. For next year. Thomas Graham could be that stud as Kerry's talking about.
Kerry Franklin.
Kerry Franklin's hitting it out of the park next year that no one's talking. Well, what about a corner? We got a corner. This kid, Thomas Graham with Jalen Johnson. Now all of a sudden you got a young duo there that no one's talking about.
And then when Kyle Fuller gets cut by the Broncos,
I love that.
We can bring him in.
I would bring him in and play him at safety.
Safety, yeah.
I honestly,
we talked about that on your show.
Yes, that kid.
That is one of the things again that Pace and Nagy kind of missed on, because Kyle Fuller wasn't great for Denver this year, but we had been talking about how we're getting to the point of his career where he's probably going to have to move to safety because he has that ability.
And he made how many turnovers for this football team just with his physicality?
You know what though, he missed one that might have cost us the Super Bowl. Might have cost us. By the way, he had a drop. I feel bad because I would never bang on him publicly. I guess we are right now. Yeah, he is such a great player. He really is, and I know that he didn't. I don't know what happened. I didn't watch enough Denver to really defensively.
Right.
To really get into it. I know. Listen, we want to talk about their offensive players because they do fantasy like that stuff. But yeah, so I always hate that. And I always hate that he dropped that pass against Rodgers. Oh. Like that is the one thing, like, do you think like he's got to think about that forever? And it's like, and he's such a good person, such a nice guy. Like I wanted that for him so badly. And then Mr. We Own You.
Oh my God.
Stick around for another year, Rodgers. Like nobody's afraid of you. Like I think somebody said, this isn't my words, but somebody pointed this out. They said Rodgers' greatest strength is actually his biggest weakness because everybody talks about like he doesn't throw any interceptions because he doesn't take chances. And that does not play in the playoffs. Like Stafford sucks and throws a ton of pick sixes and everything. But over this past weekend, when there was a big play that needed to be made, Matt Stafford made it twice. Aaron Rodgers did nothing. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, Stafford's better than Rodgers. But at the same time, Matt Stafford, I got to be honest with you, I was impressed with the way he handled the end of the game against the Buccaneers. Could have, like, I was even joking, like, here, why are they throwing it? Here comes the pick six.
I swear.
2 clutch throws. And once you saw the ball in the air on the second one, You're like, who's the receiver? Like if it was Van Jefferson, you're like, okay, that could have gone either way. You're like, oh, it's the Cooper Kupp. There's no way this is getting dropped. Amazing. By the way,
what a game! What a weekend!
And we're talking about Rodgers and Tom Brady as like potential MVPs. Well, I guess this doesn't quite translate because they're not, but it's like, you know what? Like Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, there might not be two more important players in the NFC right now. And it's no coincidence that those guys are playing it. The teams with those guys are playing in the NFC Championship game. But we're getting off track. We're here to talk Bears. Sam, do we have more questions? I know we're long-winded, and I don't care. Oh, you know what? John's asking this question. Let's talk about it. Do you think Rodgers will finally be out of our division? Well, if Rodgers leaves, he's not going to the Lions. And I doubt he's not going to go to the Vikings.
No, he's not going to the Bears.
What do we think? Like, do you like number one? Let me ask you. Do you think he still wants to play football? And number two, like, where do you think he would end up?
I think he wants to play football. I think.
Do you like honestly?
Honestly,
really?
I think he wants to prove something now more so than ever. I think the doldrums of being kept on a leash, we'll say, like they controlled him. He wanted to control what he wanted to do. And because Green Bay ended up winning and he fell into line, and then, his shine was on, he's being talked about as the MVP, and the guy's an immense talent, but I think he wants to go somewhere else and show who he is to Green Bay as well as everybody else. Pittsburgh, the New York Giants, or the Denver Broncos, those are the three teams that I think he's going to be a part of. So he could still stay in the NFC technically with the Giants, who, by the way, we play next year. But I see Pittsburgh, Denver. I see people in the chat saying the same thing. Yeah, maybe the Colts get involved with an Aaron Rodgers trade. You never know, but you're 100% right, though, too. I wouldn't say 100. It's a 50-50. Does he get, because his wife or his fiance is so Hollywood, is she involved in his business decision of saying, okay, Jeopardy wanted you, maybe another thing will want you? I mean, how much is he making with these annoying State Farm commercials and all this?
Right.
So,
but also the thing with like Jeopardy or whatever, a lot of that stuff's now out the window. He's actually done himself a disservice.
With this talk, with the political talk that's coming down the pipe, with this, everyone hates me because of the vaccination thing. Like, did you see that quote today?
We hated you for a lot of reasons. There was a lot of reasons. Listen, bro, there was a lot of reasons not to like you. And I think a lot of it just came to light. I always joke about it. I always say this too. I go, if you ever really wanted to go and know about Aaron Rodgers, and it's not about the fact that he doesn't talk to his family, it's not about his political stances and talking about all that stuff. It's the fact that he showed up on Pat McAfee's show wearing a Rise of Skywalker sweatshirt. There was no bigger damnation to me. The Rise of Skywalker? Literally the worst Star Wars movie ever. And this is in a universe where episode 2 exists. Like the Rise of Skywalker. And when you're called out by Mark Hamill, who is, the nicest person in the world, or seemingly, then but the Rise of Skywalker, like that's indefensible. Like I could, like whatever.
Fan. Are you a fan of Boba Fett? Have you been watching?
Look at Boba Fett's great. And by the way,
people are hating on that, and I'm like, me and my wife are like, we love it.
People are stupid. Like, don't get me wrong. People are completely off base. There's like, how do you not like? It has been. I think that people don't understand. Like, this is going to stretch out for a long time. The whole thing about him being protected by the Tusken Raiders, him not, by the way, spoiler for like the next 20 seconds.
Spoiler alert.
I won't even talk about it. Okay. Out of deference and respect, I won't talk about it.
We love it.
It's a great show.
I love it too. I think a lot of people hate on the casting of Boba Fett, and I can't believe how big of a Boba Fett fan I was as a little kid. Like that was my guy, but he was only in the movie for like a couple minutes. So it's like,
Mystique.
it's so crazy, Adam. Anyway, Aaron
The mystique.
Rodgers versus Boba Fett. It's not even close.
We'll take Boba Fett. Boba Fett 100%. What else we got, Sammy? Now that we've lost 20.
John Mechie, the Alabama receiver, Adam.
Ooh, what do you think?
I think coming off an injury, he's going to fall in the draft. And
he said he feels good. He said he feels amazing. I think
a lot of people are going to say that, but until we see you move, then we don't know. So that's always a risk.
Everybody loves David
risk
Bell,
reward. What's that?
Isn't David Bell? Is he the Purdue kid?
He's the Purdue kid. Yes. That
Everybody
kid's a
loves
big
him.
Receiver, talented receiver. Love that kid too. I think he's more of a second round pick, but 100%. That's what we have.
We have a second round pick. 39.
Exactly.
He's number 39 on DJ's board. Coincidentally,
the kid Williams who popped his knee, that kid, and in the championship game from Alabama, he is an all, like, everything. That kid, I was like, this kid is going to be a superstar. He's going to be the next Jamar Chase. Now he gets hurt. So in the second round, if I had to choose Jameson Williams, I would take him, a shot at him.
100%.
100%. That kid is legit 4-2.
It's always a risk, but I think that's a risk worth taking, especially in the second round. I think there's going to be some movement in the draft, and I don't know.
It's going to be interesting. How does this guy draft? I mean, that was the other thing I want to say about Ryan Poles that people need to understand. Now that it's official, I can stop worrying, because I texted Shane before the show. I'm like, has it been official? Because God, if he gets out of this building, I'll go crazy. But anyway, this guy grew up in college scouting, where Ryan Pace grew up in professional scouting. So he's on the pro personnel side. Jerry Angelo, more pro personnel, little college. So it's a good, young, higher offensive lineman who has grown up under 3 different GM thinkers in Veach, Pioli, and Dorsey. So all of those GMs have been successful. You can say whatever it is you want about them, but to the extent this guy's putting those pieces together from each, and he's got this immense amount of college scouting experience. That's why I think Ryan Poles was the Chicago Bears' #1 choice over Shane, who went over to the Giants, and it was the Minnesota Vikings' #1 choice too. Don't let them fool you.
Oh no, 100%.
They're going to try to manipulate the skull, but they can't. So I'm excited about Ryan Poles, new GM of the Chicago Bears, and see where he's going to go with this coach, Adam. This coach that's the most important, even over Poles, is who is going to be the personality, who is the team going to be the reflection of? Who is it going to be? That's the most important.
All right, David's got a question. Do you think Poles will try and get back into the first round in this year's draft for a key position we need?
It's way too early to tell how. I don't even know his way of thinking yet. I think those things are going to be when they do have the GM presser. I've watched a lot of interviews with Ryan Poles, and he's a young kid, just, taking on this big role. He's got a lot of, where he's young, he's also experienced. Can you be two? Yes. If you look at the history of this kid, former offensive tackle, who, by the way,
played for the Bears.
So he's been cut by the Bears, and now he'll be doing the cutting. That to me is the most underdog story ever. It's really pretty impressive, because there's a point, and I'm jumping off the subject like a rank, but I'm saying, here's this guy, and he's talking about being cut and how that experience has caused his whole life experience to be more empathetic to his players and players that are going to be now Chicago Bears. So I think if you have that compassion, that empathy on top of the strategy and the philosophy and analysis that you bring to the table, I think that just makes you a better GM when you have that likable trait. There's nothing more, I think, human than empathy. And to watch this kid speak on that, I think it bodes well for the Chicago Bears with this guy. I really, really do. But to know if he's going to trade up into the first round here now, we don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think we're in the business of giving more draft capital away right now.
No. I think that there should be an effort to acquire more picks. I don't even know if that's possible.
That could be.
But so that to me is the way to look. I don't think this draft is necessarily one that you want to like. There's not anybody that I'm looking at where you're like, we need to move up. We need to try to get this player or anything like that. I think if we stay, like even if we just took a rotation, if we didn't trade down, if we didn't do anything, we just stayed in our spots. Like, well, next year we're back at zero again. Not at zero, but you know what I'm saying? Like we're back. All our picks are back.
That's what I love about football. It starts all over.
And it's cool. Like, and I think now we're going to have a new coach, obviously, and a new GM. We got our quarterback of the future. I think that takes a lot of pressure off. And now it's like, let's see how it goes. We have time now. We don't have to worry about it. We don't need to be in a hurry here. This is from Jason. Who is the best offensive coordinator for JF1 next year? What do you think?
Rank or Phil? He's
talking about us.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out what he was
Rand Carthon or Phil.
Like what a DDP, Diamond Dallas Page.
Yes, DDP. Can I do it?
If he ran, he did the diamond cutter.
Can I do the diamond cutter for you?
We do the diamond cutter and just do the bang. I don't know.
But listen, who's the best offensive coach? I know Jim Caldwell is interviewing as a head coach, but I like the idea. I'm stealing for Shane, the smartest man, of an older offensive coordinator taking on this role with a new head coach, whoever that's going to be, working with Justin Fields. At 67, you're not going to see Jim Caldwell leave. He's going to stay there and tutelage this young, if that's the right word, tutor this young quarterback for years and mentor him as a great, just a great cerebral offensive coordinator, building what it is that around Justin Fields. I like that idea. But again, it's going to be a part of the head coach, Dan Quinn, Flores. Who are they bringing in to work with Justin Fields? Pep Hamilton, as Dan Payton saying, is another name that's out there. You gotta always take care of those things. Always got to take care of the offensive coordinator. That's going to be second to the offensive line coach that the coach hires, the offensive coordinator. If it's a defensive guy, obviously we've been down that road, Adam, but I'm of the belief it doesn't matter. Just get the best head coach. He'll take care of this situation on offense. I guarantee you that.
And that's one of the things that bodes well for Dan Quinn is that he's built successful staffs. And I think that obviously the Falcons had a lot of success when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, but he also did well when Sark was the offensive coordinator, when Dirk Cutter was the offensive coordinator. Dan Quinn, Bevel, I'm not as thrilled with Bevel, right? But he's done a nice job of like bringing in quality football guys. And there's a lot of different ways that this can play out. And I think that Eberflus with Jim Caldwell makes a lot of sense if you're thinking of it in kind of a Sean McVay situation, where if you have a young, inexperienced head coach, that you have somebody on the sideline with you who's called the timeout in the NFL before, which Jim Caldwell obviously has. And I'm appreciative of Jim Caldwell coming in, but I would rather him be the offensive coordinator unless they went with somebody like Brian Dable or somebody like that. But I think if you hired Dan Quinn or even Brian Flores, because remember, Caldwell was supposed to be the offensive coordinator in Miami.
Yes.
With Brian Flores, and that didn't quite work out.
It was the health. He had the health scare.
The health scare. And so honestly, like things in Miami could have been a lot different had they gone with Jim Caldwell, because I think they ended up bringing in O'Shea from the Patriots. and it didn't quite work out. And they were in the mode of like, now they were constantly trying to replace Jim Caldwell, which they could never do. If the Bears do that and they bring in Jim Caldwell to be an offensive coordinator, I think there's a lot of credence to that. And I think it would make a lot of sense. And I think too, the one cool thing about Ryan Poles is that he's already come in and established that he's the guy. He's the alpha male. And if Brian Flores is going to coach the Bears, then he needs to know who is calling the shots. And there's going to be no power struggle. Because in Miami, there were some concerns because the general manager was a little bit more hands-off. And it got to be, it was a bad vibe. But I think Ryan is now showing like, listen, I'm the dude.
Yeah,
and you're going to answer to me. You're going to answer to me. If you want to come in and make personnel decisions, enjoy coaching the Giants and Daniel Jones or whomever it's going to be. So I kind of like the way that it's going to go. Now I know that we're let's try to get a couple more in.
Yeah,
Dan
Quinn.
Okay?
Dan
way,
Quinn.
Okay
I'm fine. You're my boy. I love this guy, Adam Rank. He is a tremendous personality on the NFL Network. Probably one of my favorite people on the NFL Network that actually rock the Chicago Bears gear.
One of your favorite? Who would be above me?
Nobody. But I don't want to be that biased.
You think that Kyle Brandt's going to come after you if you got to include him?
I'm trying to get Kyle Brandt to face the Phil Music. I want to take it to him about his lack of allegiance because I couldn't be caught dead in any team's gear. I don't care. And that's why I respect you, though.
We're employees of
yes,
the
but
network.
You are a Bears fan. I've never seen you wear a Rodgers jersey.
You've never seen me in a Blake Bortles jersey?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
please don't show me a picture of that. It'll ruin my night.
Let me tell you something.
Listen. Quinn will be in Chicago tomorrow. That's the latest news. Dan Quinn.
But you got to understand. By the way, though, I have a relationship with Tony Khan, so there's that. You got to understand where we come from sometimes. I'm a fan of the sport.
Yes.
And so sometimes, if a friend of mine buys me a Blake Bortles jersey for us to wear in our private time.
A private time? Do you tag yourself on Twitter where's Blake Bortles playing now? I've totally forgot.
He went to Green Bay, so I can't anymore.
Would you go into the Green Bay? No, you wouldn't. I know you.
See, now
too much pride.
Now I would do it like if they ever invited me down to Jacksonville for a game, I'd wear AEW gear.
There you go.
There it is.
See what I'm saying? Dr. Phil, I would give Jim Harbaugh
100 million. Stop
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Come on.
I believe he's the penicillin. I don't care about that's Virginia's money. You want her. I don't care what you pay a coach. There's no cap on a coach. I've always said that. You could pay the coach 10 years, $100 million. They're going to be an $8 billion or more owned business when they get to Arlington Heights, right? So let's just be honest. I've known for about 8 years that Jim Harbaugh would fix this, and the Chicago Bears would be that football team that comes every Sunday and delivers a street fight. We haven't seen that since Mike Ditka was here, and I hate to be like that, but that's not meatball. That's reality. Yes, we saw a little sparkle with Lovie Smith. He had something going there, but Lovie's ego got in the way with Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
And that dropped us right out. I don't care what anybody else said. Bob Babbage did not bring the same to the table. And listen, we need that kind of energy here in Chicago. That's why I love Dan Quinn. Hofstra, my alma mater, Hofstra guy. And I love Brian Flores. I like those personalities that are maniacal, that are going to do everything in their power to win, that make the McCaskies very, very uncomfortable. They make Canadian people very, very uncomfortable too. So that doesn't, but no, in a good way. In a good way. They make them uncomfortable because everything in their power to win.
It wouldn't make Drew Doughty uncomfortable. That's a stud right there. He makes other people uncomfortable.
Mark Trestman makes me uncomfortable. All right.
Whatever. But like, you know what? I know they listen, passing over Bruce Arians was bad. But we had no indication that he would be good as an NFL head coach. Because it's not like he won the Coach of the Year award or anything.
I was gonna say, is he being sarcastic here? Yes,
I'm always being sarcastic.
He is the best.
I tweeted it out. I'm like, we had no indication that Arians would be good as a head coach. And people are like, oh, what about as a coach? I'm like, I'm joking. I interviewed him at Radio City Music Hall during NFL Honors. So
yeah,
I know. Yeah, I was backstage with him.
That was awesome.
And he was super cool. And he's a big Chuck Pagano guy. I'm a big Chuck Pagano guy. I know that.
Chuck Pagano threw shade at Matt Nagy, made me like Chuck Pagano even more. He kept it on.
He kept it real. He kept it 100. Chuck Pagano. All right. Tony Black asked Sean Payton. This is Sammy telling us to move on. Sean Payton retires.
I like Sammy.
Any chance he comes to the Bears in the future? I will say this. If Sean Payton is coming out and saying, I don't know if coaching is right for me, then like maybe I love Sean Payton. I want him. I would love him, but I want fully motivated Sean Payton. Like I need Sean Payton to be at his absolute best. If it was a situation where he wanted to coach and the Saints were going to wow, but it's like, sounds like he doesn't want to be there and he wants to go do TV, which is like super cool. Like I have no problem with that. Like do it, do what you got to do. And I just can't take him anymore. Like I want to like him. I want him to be there, but I can't do it.
Think of the great Marv Levy. He said it best. Once you're thinking about retiring, you are retired. And
100%.
And that's the reality of where we only could go with. I know he did take a shot through Albert Breer, your boy, Albert Breer. He said that Sean Payton was asked by the Chicago Bears about the coaching opportunity, and he turned it down because he didn't like the way the front office was set up. And he was talking about Ted Phillips, George, and that shenanigan. So he's not coming to Chicago. He's going to come out of retirement. Bold prediction, Adam. Come out of retirement in next year and be the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
That tracks. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
We'll play this back. I'll be right.
Oh, no, 100%. Like I'm not even gonna. That's the most.
He found his love through what's his name?
He found his smile again. Next year.
Hey, Greg Olson. Great broadcaster, right?
This is why they didn't fire Mike McCarthy. Because they knew next year Sean Payton's going to be available to them.
They're renting him for 1 year. That's it. And then Sean Payton's coming in.
Is Roquan not a leader? He wants to get paid like one when you got to make your teammates accountable. How do we feel? Like I think Roquan.
I love Roquan Smith.
Whatever he wants.
I think he's a leader. He's on the 5th-year deal. So you get him with the new coach, whether it be defense, and you see how he is, and you see how he's going to be in their philosophy and the culture moving forward. But I thought Roquan Smith obviously was named All-Pro, but I thought he got screwed over in the popularity contest.
Who cares? It's the All-Pro. I write a lot of pieces about the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And who deserves to be a Hall of Fame candidate and everything like that. When I put those pieces together, the Pro Bowl doesn't mean a GD thing. How many times were you selected to the All-Pro team? Because a lot of the Pro Bowl is all about what commercials do you do? Do people like you when you play Madden?
Yes.
All that stuff. It doesn't matter. All-Pro is where it's at. By the way, right. I forget who is our guy, Hub Arkish, who was like, I'm not voting for Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, Hubs, I didn't agree with it at the time, but I'm like, Hubs are actually starting to make a lot of sense. Sam, do we have more questions? Tony, the pod boss. Which defense do you prefer? 4-3, 3-4. Khalil Mack, obviously, was an All-Pro in 4-3. And Quinn says he prefers to put his hand in the dirt. Do you have a preference either way?
I'm a big fan of the 4-3 defense over the 3-4. I know it's not in vogue, but I mean, that's the way I was brought up in football, was the 4-3 front. I think obviously the talent that they have can play either or. And the fabrication of this really, if you look at it, teams are in the nickel 80% of the time, which is a 4-man front. It's whether or not somebody's on the ball or outside 9 and how they set these things up. So everybody's really multiple. It's just the base philosophy of their defense. If answering the question, I prefer a 4-3, hand in the dirt, put Khalil back on one side. Don't drop him into coverage. Let him. You want to really go that way and sack people, put those two studs on the edges and get yourself. You already got. I love this kid Tunga. He's good. He's going to be a good football player. If you get Eddie Goldman, he could be a cut. Is he motivated? Does he want? He's one of those. Is he wanting to retire types? Has been one of the best nose man. If you're going to save $9 million with him as a post-June, then you can work some magic, get a nice interior. I liked what I saw of Angelo Blackson in the interior. That kid could play. I like the 4-3 defense here moving forward. Dan Quinn is a 4-3 guy. So if that's the guy, I know he's coming in tomorrow to interview, and I know for a fact Ryan Poles really loves that coach. So, and you know what? Poles was a teammate of Brian Flores at BC. So you have that connection too. So,
by the way, can I say something too? Like, there's also a big part of me that believes like Brian Flores is going to end up as a defensive coordinator.
You don't think he's going to get a head job?
All right, listen, let me tell you something. If you look at any time a black head coach gets fired, who has been rehired? Lovie Smith never got another job. Todd Bowles has never got another job. Raheem Morris was an interim coach last year for the Falcons, has not gotten another job. Like, I'm just saying the NFL already has a problem with this. And if you're just following the way that this traditionally has gone, I'm saying that he should be a head coach. But I'm just saying, like, I have this sick feeling in my stomach, like he's not going to, like, this is going to be stupid. He's either going to go and do television, which is fine, or he's going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. And I think it's wrong, but.
Listen, I am so tired of that crap. We keep it 100. Brian Flores and Poles weren't teammates. They both went to BC. So I don't get trolled on. But they both went to BC. So they have a connection there. Those BC people obviously keep in touch with one another. It's very obvious. But I know they're very close friends. To your point, though, which is a great one, there is a lack of the black head coach. It's disheartening. And it needs to be something that's looked at.
100%.
100%. So Raheem Morris, another Hofstra kid, both him and Dan Quinn, Hofstra guys. So I was hoping that Raheem Morris would get an interview here. He was on my list. Also, 100%. Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator from the Giants. I felt like he's somebody that needed to get a head coaching despite what was going on with Joe Judge. Yeah, I know he interviewed with the Giants apparently for the job, but he's somebody I believe is a head coach in the making. Is he ready yet? I still think you get an interview with him. Eric Bieniemy and Poles, they both are in the Kansas City building. Is Bieniemy going to be all of a sudden interviewed here in Chicago? And I have a question to you. Do you go back to the Kansas City tree when you failed with Nagy and bring Bieniemy in? Would you be upset with that? I'm asking you, Adam.
No, I would be willing to give Eric Bieniemy a shot. I think I think you just have to be willing to give him his opportunity to prove himself. To me, if you have the energy of backing Justin Fields, despite the lack of success of Ohio State quarterbacks, like, keep that same energy for Eric Bieniemy. Like, understand that these guys are their own people. Right. And I think the longer history of Andy Reid, I'm trying to think, like the Doug Peterson comes from the Andy Reid tree.
Yes, he does.
So it's like, yeah, like, okay, like he's done so he's done well. So I would say that if Eric Bieniemy comes in and they want to give him an opportunity to interview for the job, I'm willing to hear it out. I think he's going to be an excellent coach at some point. So yeah, I don't let Matt Nagy ruin Kansas City or Andy Reid coaches forever. Matt Nagy turned out to be the wrong person, but Matt Nagy's his own guy. Eric Bieniemy is a different person. It's not about the system or anything like that. Let Eric Bieniemy. And obviously, if Ryan Poles has been working with Eric Bieniemy, there's nobody who knows if he's ready or not more than him. So
this might be the big indictment, I would say, if he doesn't get an interview with Chicago.
Yeah, that could actually hurt him a lot.
Exactly.
So in a way, like I hope he's still good. Like interview him. Like don't ruin his career. But yeah, I think like the more that we talk about this, I'm very committed to Jim Caldwell being the offensive coordinator. Now I'm almost like if you think of Eberflus, or Eberflus, Quinn, or Flores, I'm happy with any of those three guys. I don't know. I'm not underwhelmed anymore. I'm like, okay.
If you had your choice, which one is the guy?
Who is, you know what though? I will say this as well. I still like Brian Daboll because of what he has done. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Josh Allen's exceptional. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But he's also getting the most out of Josh Allen. Like he's finding a way to make him successful. And Brian Daboll has been coaching under a lot of different systems. You know, he's not Fat Nagy like a lot of people think because they see like he's bald. You know what I'm saying?
That's the first time I heard that one.
But he's also
hear that one. That's a good one though.
But but he's worked with Saban, Belichick, obviously with McDermott and all these things. Like, yeah, it also like, okay, like there's a lot of, you know, he's worked with a lot of different philosophies. He's called plays. He's not somebody who was on Andy Reid's staff for a couple years and had 6 games worth of calling plays. I got swept up in that. I like Matt Nagy. So listen, that's as much an indictment on me as anything else. I do want to I know I got to go because I got to, this is going to be the one we end on, Sammy. You're the best. Where do you think Matt Nagy will get an interview? Listen, let me say this about Matt Nagy. I will let you.
Please.
Do I want to?
Can we turn the page on Nagy? I don't want to talk. Go ahead. But we can't end on a Nagy question.
Well, we're not going to end on a Nagy. Let me just say this. If Matt Nagy had come in, I think a lot of the stuff that he did, like he had some positive stuff. If he would have brought in an experienced offensive coordinator and let that guy call the plays, and he was the guy doing the BU, the club dub, the whatever, he was a good
hype man. The hype man.
He's a good personality.
Yes.
He could have been very successful. If they would have had a Jim Caldwell, who I know was coaching at the Lions at the time. But if they would have had, was he? Well, whatever. Like, let's say, as a for instance, like, let's say that Jim Caldwell was the offensive coordinator. He was developing the quarterbacks, and they were successful. I think that Matt Nagy would have done very well. I think his own hubris caught him. Like, if Andy Reid wants to come in and call the plays, you're like, Andy Reid, you can call the plays. If Bill Belichick wants to come in and be like, I'm calling the plays, I'm calling the defense, you got it. Matt Nagy, who's been an assistant coach for a handful of years,
right?
Never called plays for a full season. Like, why don't you slow your roll a touch? Get your feet under you. Kind of like Sean McVay. Sean McVay did it right and I think everybody got Sean McVay was like the outlier that let a lot of people think like, well, Sean McVay could do it. I could no, that's a different person. But he also had Wade Phillips there. And I guess
he understood.
Nagy did have Fangio. So it's like, but
Fangio was the reason why he won Coach of the Year. But to your point, I really agree. If you've never been a head coach, and then you're thrust into being the head coach of the Chicago Bears, I'm talking about never on any level. I think that was and you're right. It goes down to the ego of saying, I'm going to do this because I know what I'm doing when you didn't know. If he
You
came
didn't
in there
know.
and said, I'm the CEO, I'm going to trust my guy to be the offensive coordinator, and I'm going to put my culture together, whether it was the BU and you catch lightning in a
Yeah.
bottle, but it is
And
what
if
it
you
is.
and if he's successful for 5 years and his offensive coordinator goes on to get a head coaching job and then you want to step in as the play caller,
Exactly.
there it is.
Exactly. Then you've established your culture as well as a semblance of a relationship with Mitch, who they
Yeah.
chose. Obviously, that was another marriage and all of that stuff, but I'm so glad that chapter's over. That's why
Yeah.
I
Let's get a
one
good
other
question.
yeah,
Sammy, get
one
us a good one. Get us a
good
good one to
one.
bring us home.
Yes, here we go.
Seth Butler, bold predictions. Bears
Seth
will
and the
win a
beach.
Lombardi Trophy before the Pack does. I don't think that's bold at all. That's a prediction. No, it's bold. Seth, I love where your head's at. Let's be perfectly truthful. Like,
Yes.
how close, as we sit here today, how close do you think the Packers are to a Super Bowl? Because I think if Devontae Adams is gone,
Mhm.
I think even more so than, I mean, I guess they could franchise tag him. I think that hurts them more than a lot of people want to believe. I think that he's an exceptional player. I think that if you look at that game against San Francisco, he was the only guy offensively who was playing for them, especially after A.J. Dillon got hurt. I think A.J. Dillon going down was actually a huge issue for them as well. What do you think?
I honestly have said this, and I'll say it again. Had we had competent head coach with an understanding of, first and foremost, to make a quarterback competition, once you lucked into getting Justin Fields, then you would be in these situations where you're completely competing against the Green Bay Packers. I think people get recency biased and forget every year the last team has switched up to the first team. This has happened every single solitary year in the NFL. It happens all the time. And to Adam's point, one great player mixed in with an immense talent at quarterback is the difference between a win and a loss. That stuff takes its course. When the Chicago Bears have possible lightning in a bottle in Justin Fields, you get the right coach in here to develop their offense, develop their defense and their personality, and all of a sudden everybody's singing a different tune. This is what makes this game such a the best game in the world. It's not even close. This past weekend was just a showcase of that. But I'm with you. I think the Chicago Bears, I said it last year, this is a playoff caliber roster. Unfortunately, the GM and head coach failed. Now they've course corrected. We got the Atari 2600, my favorite Christmas present. Yes, my favorite Christmas present of all time, Adam. All of a sudden, there's no SIM card. The reset button is reset. Now Ryan Poles is the GM. Who is going to be the coach? This is the Sick Podcast with my guy, Adam Rank. How could it not be even more sick every time we're together? Just love debating with this guy. Me and you debated for 3 years in glory, though, together. Double doinking together, everything.
All right. Listen,
sounds bad if that's a drop.
No.
Matt Nagy. And now it's over. Now we get to go together.
Now we're in unison.
We're in unison.
We're in concert. All right.
You had hope for a long time, but I was proud of you because you admitted, you know what, I was wrong about Matt. He's let me down. That says everything about your character.
I was a big proponent of Matthew Nagy. It didn't work out. I hope that he learns. I don't know that he'll ever get another head coaching job, but I hope that he enjoys his life as a quarterback's coach, as an offensive coordinator. I will see him on the sidelines in a visor with his bald head in the sun, and be like, you know what, Matt? Like, it wasn't that bad. If I ever see him out at the combine, I'll buy him a drink. He probably hates me now because I turned on him so hard this year that he texted somebody on one of my shows.
Come on.
A fellow analyst of mine texted that person and said, thank you for always having my back. And that person showed me the text. And I'm like, oh, I was just ripping him. And that person was like, yeah, he's obviously watching this show. And it's now understood. I'm like, listen, fine. I don't care. I had his back for so long.
You did.
Listen, and there's no look. I did not make the baseball team at Cal State Fullerton. It does not mean that I'm a bad person. It just means there were people better at playing baseball than me. And one of them now is the manager of the Oakland A's. That's all that it means. It doesn't mean that you're a failure at life or anything like that. Similarly, I can say that Matt Nagy failed as the coach of the Bears. I still think he's a great guy. We shouldn't have booed his son, any of that stuff.
We didn't, though. Don't say
I know. And you know what? He's a good person. And I know. And the one thing that I was really the most proud of Bears fans, and I forget who wrote this, and I don't want to publicize who it was. But when somebody came out and said, like, oh, Matt Nagy, Urban Meyer, birds of a feather, that Bears fans came out and were like, no, like, listen, we don't like Matt Nagy. He's not a great coach, but you're being ridiculous now. So I said, okay, go Bears fans. Good for us. Like, I'm glad we didn't let that stand because that was too much. He's a bad head coach.
I'm glad he's gone. We could put that away.
God bless him. He's a good person.
He did ruin 4 years of my life.
He did not. He didn't. Listen.
He did.
We won an NFC North title. We won an NFC North title.
I was there at that game when they beat the Packs. Back sack. I was shouting you out that day.
I know you were. Listen, but I want to thank you for joining us here for the inaugural Take It to the Rank. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday, probably not as long, but you get Phil and I together, and it's going to go. Listen, Sammy's got to go to bed. Sammy's up late.
Sammy's up late.
Sammy is up late. I've kept him up, and I don't want to do that to him. And I know I'm going to get a talking to when the show is over. And that's fine because I wanted to be here for the Bears fans, and I wanted to be here for you. The Tape Never Lies Network. I'm sure all of you who are here because you know Draft Dr. Phil. You don't know who I am, so I appreciate getting the rub from you. It's like if I showed up and I'm like, hey, like if I was running an independent wrestling show and I'm like, hey, everybody, make sure to follow Randy Orton here. He's on the he's in the WWE. Make sure that you like and follow him. But Phil, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me that you were our first guest on this particular show. So thanks.
Always for you, Adam. I'll always be here for you. You're a friend to the end. I always say this on my network. I see a lot of our TTNL fans here and Bear fans around the world. Adam Rank is real. He's a true class act. He's not paying me to say this. Him and his family, our family, and I can't thank you enough as well for all the support you've given TTNL and myself. So subscribe to Adam's channel. Let Sammy know how much you guys love him. How could you not love Adam Rank? I know my whole family, including my sons, real quick. We're in Chili's. My son turns up to the TV. Daddy, it's Uncle Adam on TV. I go, who? Because I was like, who's Uncle Adam? They just use that all the time with all the people I love because I'm always telling them as they were kids. And I look, there's Adam Rank. And I'm like, oh my God, I took a picture and sent it to Adam, how excited they were. But you always wear your colors on your sleeve. You always keep it 100. And that's why I love you so much, because you don't hide the reality that you love the Bears and want the best, but you hold them accountable and there's no bias. You're a funny guy and an amazing person. So anytime TTNL heads are going to show up, I'm sure they're all subscribing now to the channel. So I'm glad you had me on and had a great time talking Bears and the new era with Adam Rank. Take it to the rank. I didn't know that was the name of the show. It's my bad, but now I know.
Right there.
I can write a song to that. Me and Cool Kennedy. Take it to the rank.
We might have to commission that, but thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everybody who participated. We got a ton of questions. We appreciate you, everybody. And everybody, of course, from the TTNL family who joined us here tonight. We really do appreciate it. So thank you so much. And Sammy, why don't you write us out? And until next week, or until we got a podcast coming up later this week. And we'll see you soon. Bears fans.